this was actually an excerpt from me and James just rambling in between the main questions, but he says a few things in here which I found really helpful in understand the final section, so chapter 19 of the Book of Judges, which actually sheds light on the whole Book of Judges. So I thought I'd put it in, even though it is a bit of a rambling conversation. So hopefully you find it helpful.
That seems to be its own structurally. That seems to be its own entity, as
Yeah.
far as I can see. Like, because there aren't any judges there. It's yeah, and chronologically, I think it comes at the start of the book as well. So it's its own sort of entity, I think.
I often wonder. I meet up with a guy who's learning animation at the moment,
Hmm.
and I would love him. I can't force him to do things how I want them, but I'm thinking it would be so interesting if filmmakers learned, if they made films like the way authors write their books.
Right. Yeah.
That
Yeah.
would
Yeah.
be that would be a really odd film, wouldn't it? The Book of Judges, but with this whole thing right at the end.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, sometimes that happens, doesn't it? I think I watched a Mission Impossible film once, which kind of started with a scene.
Yes, from the end.
Yeah, yeah.
They
Now,
often do that. Memento does that. Have you seen Memento?
no, I haven't. No.
That's the classic Christopher Nolan, where the first scene is the end, and then the whole of the movie is leading up to that.
Right, right.
But this is almost the other way around, isn't it? With Judges, it's like the beginning is at the end.
Yeah, yeah. I suppose it is. Yeah, yeah. I suppose it is. It's interesting. It. I think I was speaking to Alistair about it once, and I likened it to a sort of a post-match analysis after a football match or something, where they're kind of, they're looking back on it and trying to explain what went wrong. But
Yeah.
in keeping with the book, it's done as a narrative kind of thing rather than, yeah.
And
Yeah.
I haven't thought about it much. So almost the suggestion is, yeah, it's almost the reveal of. It's almost like you watch it a bit like that. Let's say you watch the cricket game and England lose horrifically,
Mm.
and then the final scene is of the team in the locker room before the game,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
all drinking beer together or something,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
and then you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah, it's a great analogy. Yeah, or perhaps the manager's drinking beer, because as I see it, those last few chapters kind of lay the blame at the feet of the Levites.
Yeah, okay.
And so in the, it's proliferated by that phrase, there being no king in Israel. And I take it then that the Levites should have been the ones acting not as a king, but as leaders and a positive influence. And rather than doing that, they were leading Israel into idolatry initially and then into violence in sort of chapter 19 onwards. So